In this video, we'll be taking a look at the 2024 electoral map if Donald Trump wins the popular vote. A new poll from the New York Times shows Trump leading Harris by 1% nationwide, 48 to 47, and this is a pretty big deal. No Republican has won the popular vote since George W. Bush in 2004. And today, we'll be taking a look at the election map if Trump can pull off a 1-point victory over Harris nationally. And so we're going to start off by filling in the solid states, and it's important to remember that in 2016, Trump lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton by 2%. He then lost it by nearly 5 to Joe Biden in 2020. However, the Electoral College and the way it works, it was able to help Donald Trump get over 278 years ago, but he fell just short in 2020. Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona, 3 states decided by less than 1%. If Joe Biden had lost these 3 states, he would have lost the election entirely. And so Donald Trump winning the popular vote by 1% would shift the map significantly to the right, and it's definitely not impossible. So we're going to start off with the safe Harris states first. Obviously, we're going to have a much shorter list than we typically do. She's only going to win in California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the 1st District of Maine. These are the states that she is going to win by 15 percentage points or more. As for Trump, we have a significantly longer list, starting off with the more traditional safe red states: Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except the 2nd District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, Alaska, and the 2nd District of Maine. However, in this scenario, we do have 2 more solid Trump states. The first one will be found in the Midwest, and of course, it is the state of Iowa. The state of Iowa used to be very competitive. For over half a century, it was one of the most competitive states in the country, but Iowa has not gone for any candidate of any party by a solid margin since it went to Nixon in 1972. 52 years ago. And so Iowa can go in favor of Trump by 15 points or more. He won the state by 8 points in 2020. He won it by 9 in 2016. And over these last 8 years, Iowa has only shifted even more to the right. In 2022, its governor, Kim Reynolds, a Republican, was reelected by a 20-plus point margin. And so Iowa will be solid red on our map, but just barely. Trump can probably pull off a 15 to a 16-point victory. We will also have the state of Texas, which has been a traditionally red state over the last 4 decades. The last time that it voted for a Democrat was Jimmy Carter in 1976. And in Texas, yes, the election was closer in 2020, but Trump still managed to win by a nearly double-digit margin in 2016. He's probably going to win by 10 to 12 points at the very minimum this time around, but if he does pull off a popular vote victory, there's no doubt Texas is going to be safe for the GOP for the first time since 2012. So the Lone Star State will give the former president a 40 electoral vote boost. And so with these solid states now filled in for both Trump and Harris, Trump takes a commanding lead with 172 electoral votes to the vice president's 83. We're now going to fill in the likely states decided by margins between 7 to 15 points. These states are going to be more competitive, but one candidate will still be heavily favored. And so when looking at the likely states for Harris, a lot of them are going to be states that Biden did manage to win by 15 points or more in the last election. States like Washington, Oregon, Illinois. These states simply are going to be more competitive as Harris is now the nominee. She is performing significantly worse than Joe Biden was in the 2020 election in both the polling and in terms of her general popularity and enthusiasm. And so we're going to start off on the West Coast with the likely blue states. Washington and Oregon will still favor the vice president. We also have Illinois, like we mentioned before, and up in the Northeast, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and Delaware will all still go to Vice President Kamala Harris. She's now up at 181 electoral votes. Before we continue, only 16% of you guys are actually subscribed, so please take the time to subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November. And follow me on Twitter for daily political updates. Link in the description below. Moving on now to filling in the likely Trump states, we're going to begin in the Midwest with Ohio. The Buckeye State's 17 electoral votes are just going to be decided by under 15 points. Iowa had right over that 15-point threshold, Ohio right under. This is a state that Trump flipped in 2016 after it went to Obama in 2012. And so generally, Iowa is slightly more conservative than Ohio. That's why I had Iowa as solid and Ohio as likely. But there's no doubt if Trump wins the popular vote, he's going to win Ohio by at least 12 to 13 points. Down in Florida, we have another state that used to be pretty competitive, just like Iowa and Ohio, but that is no longer the case. Trump is probably going to win the state by 7 points, even if he loses the popular vote. But Florida is a state Trump won in 2016. He also won in 2020, and there's no doubt he is going to win for a third time this November. In 2012, Florida was still very competitive. It went blue in favor of Obama. It was the closest state in the entire election. Go back to 2008, when Obama won 365 electoral votes, Florida went to Obama by a lesser margin than Trump won it by just 4 years ago. And so there's no doubt Florida will be a double-digit state in favor of Trump if he defeats Kamala Harris in the popular vote by a 1% margin. And so with the solid and likely states now filled in for both candidates, Trump leads with 219 electoral votes, just 51 away from the White House with 138 left up for grabs. Kamala Harris trails not even at 200. We're now going to fill in the lean states that will be decided by margins between 2 to 7 points. These states are going to be competitive. They realistically could go either way, but one candidate still maintains a slight edge. And so we only have one lean blue state on this entire map, and it will be the state of Colorado. 10 electoral votes, a state that Joe Biden won by nearly 14 points in the last election. Today, Harris is doing significantly worse, and if she can't win the popular vote, she's not going to win Colorado by more than 7 points. It's as simple as that. As for Trump, though, we have quite an extensive list of lean states. Many states he's going to win by somewhere between 2 to 7 points, but more realistically, between 2 to 5. And so we're going to begin on the East Coast with the Tar Heel state of North Carolina. The state went to Trump in the 2020 election, even though almost everyone believed that it would vote to the left of Georgia, which was the state that actually flipped in favor of the now incumbent president. North Carolina went to Trump by 4 points in 2016. That margin narrowed down to just over 1 in 2020. But in 2024, there's no doubt Trump is going to expand his margin in the Tar Heel state against Kamala Harris. This is a state Democrats have only won once since 1976, and Kamala Harris is not about to be the second Democrat to do so. The last time a Democrat won North Carolina was Barack Obama in 2008, and just think about all the enthusiasm that he had behind him running against, honestly, not that great of a Republican nominee in John McCain after 8 years of George W. Bush. Those were the extraordinary circumstances under which Obama was able to win North Carolina. We're not seeing any of that right now for Kamala Harris. There's no doubt she is going to lose the state of North Carolina. She is also on track to lose in neighboring Georgia. The state just went to Joe Biden by such a narrow margin. It's not going to take too much for Trump to win this state back. 0.24%. This was the closest state in the entire election 4 years ago. Today, Donald Trump leads in the polling, which he did not do in 2020. And if he wins the popular vote, there's no way he is going to perform worse than he did in 2016 when he won Georgia by over 5 points. And so the Peach State is also going to be lean Republican, and so will Arizona. The thinking is pretty similar here. Arizona was another state that very narrowly flipped in favor of Democrats for the first time in 2 decades. But considering that Biden was in a much better position 4 years ago than Harris is in right now, Donald Trump is probably going to win the state back, especially if he wins the popular vote. I mean, in 2016, when he lost the popular vote by 2%, he still won Georgia and Arizona. In Arizona, he won by nearly 4. Georgia, again, he won by over 5. So we now have 3 of the 4 Sunbelt states in the lean red column. We're also going to add a 4th, and that is Nevada. The silver state hasn't gone red since 2004, but a Trump victory here wouldn't be all that surprising. According to the betting markets, Donald Trump is the favorite. He currently has a 54% chance at flipping a state he has never won before. The state went to Clinton and Biden by the exact same 2.4% margin in both of the last 2 elections. But this time around, Trump leads in the polling here. He is the favorite, and when he wins the popular vote, he is no doubt going to flip Nevada, become the first Republican to win the state in 2 decades. We're not done yet, though. Trump is now just 2 electoral votes away from winning the presidency. He can win any of the remaining states to cross the necessary 270 threshold. We're going to move up to the Midwest, though. We have 3 remaining lean states going in favor of Donald Trump, and just based on where my mouse is, I think it's pretty obvious what those 3 states are going to be. We're going to begin with the Keystone state of Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes. There's no doubt Trump is the favorite here. I mean, just look at the betting markets. They give him a 55% chance at winning this state. Without Joe Biden on the ballot, Joe Biden, who was born in Pennsylvania, Democrats no longer have that state advantage. And if you look at neighboring Wisconsin and Michigan, Kamala Harris isn't doing much better. She's behind in the polls in Wisconsin and barely leads in Michigan. But these are 2 states where polling vastly overestimated Joe Biden in 2020. He was supposed to win Wisconsin by 8 points, according to 538. He eventually won the state by 0.6. He was supposed to win Michigan by 7 points. He eventually won the Wolverine state by 2.8. And so these are 2 states that Donald Trump is no doubt going to win if he can carry the popular vote. And even if he doesn't, he is still the favorite in all 3 of the blue wall states. And so with all of the solid, likely, and lean states filled in, Trump is at 312 electoral votes, Harris at 191, but we do have 5 states and a congressional district remaining to fill in. These are going to be the tilt states, states that will be decided by margins of 2 percentage points or less. These are going to be the closest states in the entire election. And just look at the states remaining. I mean, it's not battlegrounds like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, or states like Nevada, Georgia, or North Carolina. We have states like Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, and New Mexico, all states that went to Joe Biden by 7 points or more in the 2020 election. If Trump can win the popular vote, he is going to make a huge impact on the electoral map and would probably win in a modern-day landslide. And so I'm going to fill in the tilt states for Kamala Harris first, beginning in New Mexico. This is a state that was pretty close in 2016. Hillary Clinton won it by just 8 points. Joe Biden barely improved in 2020. He improved a lot more in neighboring Colorado, which went from a lean blue state for Clinton to almost being a solid one for Biden. And so with the Hispanic vote continuously shifting to the right, the state is only going to get more competitive in the next few election cycles. And in this one, if Kamala Harris can't win the popular vote, she'll have a hard time winning a state that Joe Biden won by a double-digit margin, like New Mexico. Moving up to Maine, this is going to be the final state that will go in favor of Kamala Harris. 2 electoral votes. It was very close in 2016, but Joe Biden did win it by a nearly double-digit margin in 2020. Kamala Harris is going to make this state more competitive, and with Trump polling very well in the 2nd congressional district, Maine could go down to the wire if Kamala Harris struggles to win the popular vote. We now have 3 remaining states and 1 congressional district. The 2nd district of Nebraska is going to be tilt red, while we also have New Hampshire falling into the tilt Republican category as well. The Granite State was very close in 2016. Trump came so close to winning it, losing to Clinton by less than half a percentage point. But this time around, if Trump can flip the popular vote, he can win New Hampshire. And now to finish off the map with Minnesota and Virginia, we're going to begin in Minnesota, a state that Democrats almost lost in 2016. And since then, the state fundamentally has only shifted more and more to the right. Democrats are going to have a harder and harder time winning the state in the next few election cycles, even though Kamala Harris is running with the state's literal governor, that of course being Tim Walz. If she cannot win the popular vote, she is probably not going to win Minnesota, even though this state hasn't gone red since 1972. This would be a huge victory for Donald Trump. We also have Virginia, 13 electoral votes. Joe Biden probably would have lost Virginia if he had stayed in the race, just like Minnesota. Donald Trump would have had a super easy path to 270 if Kamala Harris did not replace Biden as the nominee. But even with Harris now on the ticket, I mean, clearly she isn't doing that well. According to the latest New York Times poll, she isn't even on track to winning the popular vote. And so if Donald Trump does indeed win 48 to 47, states like Minnesota and Virginia are basically gone for the Democrats. And so in the scenario where Trump wins the national vote by a 1% margin, he'll be able to win up to 340 electoral votes. Kamala Harris doesn't even even get to 200, and this would be a modern-day landslide in favor of the former president. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November, and join my Discord server, link in the description below.